Live on WFLA Now. This is Run for Fun with running enthusiast Leigh Spann.
All right, let's go. Welcome back to the WFLA Now Stream Center for this week's episode of Run for Fun. Now, this show is, of course, designed to give you all those tips to make running more enjoyable when everyone says there's no way that running is fun. Well, we beg to differ. I'm your host, Leigh Spann. I'm a meteorologist here at WFLA, but I've also been an avid runner now for more than 13 years. And I still feel like I need to know so much and that I'm continuing to learn. So the more I learn, the more I actually get to really enjoy the sport. So I wanted to create this show to help spread that information around and get more people lacing up because it's fun. And joining me today, as always, my coach, Coach Maria. And you look great for having just returned from Utah a couple hours ago.
I sure did. It was so fun. I love Utah. Have you ever been to Utah?
I've never been to Utah, but tell everybody why you were there and what kind of race it was.
Well, we did the Revel, big cottonwood race, and it's downhill. So it's I think the half marathon starts at 7,500 feet and goes down to like 4,000. The marathon starts at 9,500 and goes to 4,000. So
you're going through a lot of different temperatures, first of all, right?
Yes.
It's cold up at the top.
And then it was very warm at the bottom. And then, and you're going downhill fast. Like, it is a fun, and it's the most beautiful race ever. Like, you're literally running in a canyon down a mountain. It is unbelievable. It's like, I cried part of the way because it was just so beautiful.
And people may be thinking like, well, that seems like a great way to run downhill, and it is for a shorter distance.
Yeah, I mean, the half marathon's totally manageable, and so is the marathon, but it's just very hard to train in Florida because you can't really mimic that downhill for that long, that, eccentric contraction on your quad the entire time. It's very difficult, and you have to do a lot of wall sits and things that we don't like to do. Sometimes backward elliptical can help, but there's not too many things in Florida that can mimic that. Even if you did hills, you can't. And you still have to be smart running it. And it's hard to do. And you're like, this is so fun. And I'm running so fast.
So do you tell people, this is kind of off topic, we will get to the carbo-loading at the bottom that you see, which is, we were talking to, seems like also lots of fun to carb load. It can also be a challenge. But going downhill, do you tell people to try to be parallel with the ground, or
you really want your feet to be underneath you, and you want to shorten your stride? A lot of people try to open their stride and go really fast. I almost sit my abs were really sore because I was holding my core back a little bit. And you really want to have soft feet because it's I think it's 5 times the impact going downhill. So you can really mess up your knees. If you don't have good knees, do not do a downhill race. Do not do it. And you also have to have a significant amount of muscle. If you're strength training, you'll do better. The more muscle you have, the easier the impact is on your body. So if you're really, really thin and don't carry any extra muscle, that's also not a great idea.
And do you lose more toenails because you're banging up against the tie of your shoe a lot?
I didn't. You're still landing under your hips. Okay. So you're still staying on the front. Yes, you're still staying on the front of your feet. Mostly it's the quads. The quads are pretty beat up.
Well, we're glad you're back from Utah. Got back late last night and came here. So we appreciate you being part of today's show, which is about carb loading. And that may also sound like, wow, the best part of racing must be the days before as you're carb loading. So we're going to talk about what it is not, and when and how to do it. Because, yes, a smorgasbord of carbs seems like a wonderful thing. Now, this picture is something that I took in the week before my last marathon. This were all the carbs that I went out and purchased, which is vanilla wafers and graham crackers and candy and pretzels and bagels and what else I got in there? Another, the honey stingers and bananas, and then sports drinks. I didn't have that out on the counter, obviously, but the all of that, and that was supposed to eat in 3 days.
Yeah, and here's the thing, it's so funny because I just carbo loaded for my race because it was over 90 minutes. You really need to carbo load for any race over 90 minutes. And I hadn't carbo loaded in a while because I wasn't even planning on really racing it, which I didn't. But you still need the extra carbs even if you're not running as fast as you want to run. It's kind of like a car. The faster you're going to go, the more carbs you need. And after just 24 hours of carbo loading, I'm like, I hate this. If you like carbo loading, you're not doing it correctly.
Yes, that's where I was going with this.
It's really not fun, actually.
The first day is kind of fun.
The first day is fun. I agree.
Eating all these things, and then, by the second and sometimes third day, because you can have a 3-day carb load. We'll talk about that, but I can't have another pretzel. I can't have another pretzel. And so, you've given us something, candy and sports drinks. That is carb, it's at least adding carbs, but it's not just taking up all the room in your stomach.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to carb load. We'll talk about ways to do it. It's funny. After the race, all I wanted was a salad with chicken.
Yes.
I'm like, I just never want to see a carb again.
Yeah. I usually go for a burger because it's like that's
Yeah.
greasy protein as opposed to just the
Which you can't do carb loading. This
Right.
is what I tell people.
Yeah, no fats.
You want to limit your fat because, and the funny thing is, all of the fun food that's has carbs in it has a lot of fat. And so when people send me, fries and a hamburger, and they're like, I'm carbo loading, I'm like, oh gosh, your stomach is going to be jacked tomorrow. Like, that is not carbo loading.
So let's talk about what it is, because there is science to back this up. So we're the first time I'd ever heard this word came from Maria, and now I see it everywhere because once you hear something. But the glycogen stores in your muscles. This is why this isn't just like let's go have fun and let's have a spaghetti dinner the night before. This is science of how your muscles work. So explain to them a little bit about what that is.
All that is sugar in your muscles.
And why do we need sugar in our muscles?
Because we use sugar and glycogen. They say glycogen. We use that as we're running. The faster we want to run, the more glycogen we use, which is also why we start slow in the beginning of a race, because we don't want to burn through that glycogen too quickly, because then we have nothing for the end of the race. And even if you carbo load perfectly, you still can only carry enough for 90 minutes. So that's why we have to take in some when we're running. Like they say 200 to 300 calories an hour, depending on your weight. And it seems like a lot, but you have to train your stomach to do it. So even with the carbo loading, you don't want to just like right before your race carbo load. Like, you want to try a couple of long runs. You don't have to carbo load for every long run. That's not necessary. But I would pick a couple of long runs at the end of your marathon cycle to carbo load and make sure your stomach can handle it, because we do need to train our stomach, and we can train our stomach to do anything we want to, but it just takes a little time.
And so these, the glycogen is what's just kind of living in your muscle, and you're using it up as you run. And so
it's also holding water in your muscles, which is keeping you hydrated.
Yes.
So when people feel puffy from carbo loading, because you're going to feel puffy, I suggest wearing some pants that are elastic waist.
So I asked on Facebook, does anyone have any questions? And Shelly just wrote, I'm sure she said this off the cuff in a very silly way, but I wanted to bring it up. She says, hope you didn't put on too much weight with your carb loading. And she'd be like, they have a little ha-ha laugh. But of course, I wasn't offended at all, because I was showing her the amount of food I was eating. But you will
gain
up.
like 2 to 4 pounds, and it's just water.
Yeah.
Do not panic. Like, stay off the scale. Don't weigh yourself. Like, it's not necessary. And by the end of the race, it will be gone. Like, you will use it all. Like, we are talking about fuel. Like, this is like, it's funny. I have a runner that has an eating disorder, and she told me that she really struggles with carbo loading because she feels like she's binging. And I can totally see that too.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to know your body and know what you can and can't handle. And so there are ways you can carbo load that feel less like binging, and there are ways you can carbo load that feel more like binging. If you are healthy and you have a healthy relationship with food, you can do a 2-day carb load. If you need a little bit more time, you can actually carbo load for 3 days, or you can it doesn't work as effectively, but you can do it over 5 days.
The idea is just to build up, because also if you're just kind of tuning in and don't really know how a training cycle works, those last 2 weeks you're also not running nearly as much. So you're literally trying to hoard that energy in your body. So you're not exercising, and you're adding a ton of energy in the form of these.
And actually, just by naturally not running as much, you're going to have more glycogen in your muscles, which is good. They actually did a study a couple of years ago that said that carbo loading doesn't work for women. And they found out later that actually women always undereat carbs. So that actually when they did carbo load, it didn't change their result, because they were so under carbo loaded during training that they we're just barely breaking even with that.
So because we're all like, oh, we can now finally eat the carbs, and we eat them all, but we had been depleting ourselves for so long.
And depleting their training for so long. Because sadly, there's so much misinformation on Instagram and Facebook about, you know, and I don't want to say misinformation because like there are some reasons to not eat carbohydrates, but for runners, like we are a different breed, and you have to be careful what you're watching and where you're getting your information from, because we're such a small percentage of the population, and we need to eat carbs differently than the regular population. Right. So if you're reading on Instagram, be careful of your carbs, be careful of your carbs. These are mostly people that are sedentary or just walking, and they're not running in the way we do. We burn so many calories and so many carbs every single day.
And if you restrict those, running or, exercising in general is not going to be fun anymore, because it is going to be, you're taxing your muscles that don't have a lot, your muscles are already done with their energy, and you're trying to force them to go farther. So there is science to back up these things.
Yeah, there is a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of people talk about fat adapted running, and we can fat adapt to running, and
what that means.
It means like restricting your carbohydrates so your body learns to burn fat.
Oh.
The problem with that is burning fat as fuel is so much harder on your body, and we're already hard on our body enough. And the studies long term, I mean, it's terrible for your immune system. It's terrible for your hormones, and people don't really realize that like the long term and short term of that is just very dangerous for runners. So just be careful where you get your information, and don't be afraid of carbs. Like we need carbohydrates.
And you can get them from all these different ways. Now, obviously, I don't go around eating boxes of vanilla wafers and graham crackers like all day, every day. No. But this was what I went for 3 to 4 days before my last marathon. This was the morning before, where we ate fruity pebble pancakes. Because normally, I mean, I do love pancakes and I do love things like that, but I always order bacon. I always, whenever I love my breakfast. But obviously, there were no bacon and eggs that morning. It was just nothing but sugary pancakes. And I look happy, but it was also my 3rd day of carbohydrate.
Yeah, so you're like, please, no more carbs.
I didn't actually even finish. There were 2 huge ones, and I couldn't believe it that I couldn't get those all the way down. But it was just because I had been using all of the carbs off for several days beforehand. But look how happy I am.
Yeah. And we as runners, we're so worried about being healthy, and it is important. I would never tell you to eat, I call them junk carbs, even though your body cannot tell the difference between, a carb from a vanilla wafer and a carb from oatmeal. The only difference is the amount of fiber in them. Normally when you're running, and I would always choose carbs like fruit and rice and sweet potatoes and things that are like lower on the glycemic index.
It's a normal day.
Yeah. But when you're carbo-loading, you want to eat the least amount of fiber you can eat, because otherwise you're asking your body to perform at a high level, and that's asking your metabolism to go work harder than it does. And so it doesn't want to have to metabolize fiber while you're running. Like that's just going to make you go to the bathroom.
Yeah. We have a whole episode on the GI issues. And so fiber, adding extra fiber to try to get the quote unquote good carbs can have a negative effect. If you're in a porta potty for a minute or so, that's taking the time off of your goal time.
And again, when we say good carbs, like the general population like says good carbs, and I'm like, okay, well, yes, I mean those are lower glycemic, which means they keep your blood sugar more stable. Here's the thing, like when you're running, you don't have to worry about your blood sugar being stable, because the running keeps your blood sugar stable. So you're not going to crash when you're running if you're just burning that sugar all the time. So you don't have to worry about that so much. But I mean, this is assuming that you're all healthy, that you don't have any kind of medical issues. That's completely different.
And we did get a Facebook question about that. Matt wanted to know, first of all, when to start carb loading, which we will talk about. And he's like, knowing when is the hardest part. But he's also curious about pre-diabetic carb loading. And that's what you were just kind of talking about, is that, if you want to keep your glycemic level low, you might have to really talk to a doctor or a nutritionist before you do anything
I
like
always
this.
suggest going to a nutritionist. I'm limited in my knowledge of that, and I'm very clear about that. But basically, when you're carbo loading, if you eat a moderate amount of protein with your carbs, I wouldn't say just eat straight carbs if you're pre-diabetic, because that's going to spike you and drop you. But if you can get protein in there, eat protein first or protein with it, that's going to keep your blood sugar from going crazy. And I do say moderate amount of protein, lots of carbs, limit fat. That's the really thing you got to stay away from. You got to stay away from the fat.
Yeah, because again, a bunch of French fries does sound really, really good.
Yeah, but that's mostly, actually, French fries are mostly fat.
Yeah, but I mean, they're good.
They are super good. Save them for after the race.
So how much? So we talked. How much should you eat? Well, that will depend certainly on Matt's question when you start. How much you should eat every day, but you got to check the grams of carbs on or the weight of the carbs in the on the labels, and you can use an online calculator, and then of course have the sports drinks and candy. So Maria, let's talk a little bit about this online calculator. So we have one that we have used. I have used. This is actually mine, courtesy of Featherstone Nutrition. She is a wealth of information on social media.
She's my superhero. I love her.
So we always say be careful who you're listening to.
Yeah.
This is Featherstone Nutrition on Instagram. Gives you fun information, and it's in such a fun way you learn it.
And she gives you a lot of good free advice. If you need help, she's the Instagram page to follow. She also will do personalized plans for you. So you should definitely check that out.
So she has on her website, featherstonenutrition.com. I have, my age, 44, my height, which is 5'9". I guesstimated, because I don't have a scale anywhere in my house, about 140 pounds, and I'm running a marathon, and I want to do a 3-day carb load. So it says that I need 509 grams of carbs is that per day?
Yes.
Yes, per day. 509 grams of carbs per day. That's 1,500 grams over those 3 days. It's a lot. That's what I was doing when you saw that picture that I had taken, is that it's a lot of carbs. I think we added up. It's at least, 4 bags of those, of the pretzels. So 4 bags of just
straight pretzels.
Now, obviously, I didn't want to just eat 4 bags of straight pretzels over a couple of days, but it was it was hard. It was work to do.
It's really hard to do. If you're doing it correctly, it's hard to do it. It is you have to, I usually tell my clients, use MyFitnessPal, because even if you think you're eating more carbs, you're not. You're just not. To be able to eat 500 grams of carbs is a lot. Probably on average, we probably naturally, as runners, eat maybe 250 a day if we're doing well.
Right.
If we're a high carb eater, which I always struggle, because I love protein and fat. That's my jam. So I really struggle to eat carbs. But 500 grams, you have to consciously do it. Yeah. You can't just
wing it. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to have a bagel here, and I'm going to have some pretzels over here. And I will say that, the next step, because again, finding out how many carbs I needed was sort of my first step this year. I did not journal it, out, and that would probably be my next step, because, okay, wait, what did I have to, I didn't write it all down. I didn't keep real close track of it. I was just looking at the carbs and just trying to, the grams, and just trying to get them in. So
and
the next
if
step
you're traveling,
yes,
take your carbs with you.
Yes, I did.
You want to take your carbs with you, because you want to eat things that your stomach is used to. There's not except, I'm going to shout out to Petra. Don't do it like Petra.
Oh, Petra.
We love you, Petra, but she, and she would tell you this story to online. She packed powdered Gatorade in her suitcase in a bag.
Oh,
they really thought she had cocaine.
Yep. That's probably not great.
Don't do that. She had to have extra searches this weekend, and it was not so fun for her.
Oh, so this isn't from a while back.
She literally did it on Friday, and she got detained and had to do the real search, and she actually sadly picked the blue Gatorade, which actually I'm pretty sure when they test cocaine, it comes out blue. And so it was even the added pressure. I'm like, oh man. it was bad news, but.
So it's because because I'm sure she's thinking, oh, well, I can't travel with liquids. So
our brain doesn't even go to cocaine. We're not like there. So we're like, oh, it's just Gatorade. You can taste it.
They're like, no, ma'am. No, I can't do that.
No. So I usually carry the packets of Gatorade, like the individual servings, because that's so smart because, drinking, you have to drink anyway. It has electrolytes and it has sugar in it, which is it's a great way to carb load.
Put it in water.
Yeah, you just dump it in water, and then you don't get stopped in security because there's no like powders.
Right. And so, but I mean, because I carry just about all of this with me when we flew to Cincinnati. But then I bought Gatorades in a convenience store, so I didn't have to worry about that. But yes, it was a whole satchel of just nothing but carbs, and then we would sit at the airport and everyone would start pulling out their snacks. I don't know what people must have thought of us in the Tampa International Airport.
I have had people get stopped for carbs, in security, which I'm like, because they think it's a little strange.
Yes,
but I'm
like a bag full of snacks.
I've had more than one person had to pull out, like imagine going through security and pulling out all of your carbs and having to put them on the belt. Like, oh man. So yeah, it can be interesting, but I know Megan Featherstone, she eats bagels. She eats like 9 bagels, I think she said, in a day, the day before her race. And I'm like, ooh.
It's a lot.
Bagels, man.
It's a lot of chewing.
It's a lot of
chewing. I had, because, I think we flew out to go to Cincinnati in May on a Friday. And so that meant I was carb loading on Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday once I got to Cincinnati. But, my coworkers were laughing at me as I was like pulling off pieces of these bagels and just like gnawing on them for 2 days straight while they were like, how are you? And at first they did the same thing everyone else did. Well, that looks like so much fun. And I'm like, it's not.
It's actually not. I like to do a 2-day load because I just hate carbo-loading. Yeah. And it feels to me like even with the 3-day load, it's still a ton of carbs. So I feel like, okay, I just have to do it for 2 days. And so what I do is I do a salty day and then a sweet day.
Okay.
Because I can't do all that sweet. I do Fig Newtons one day, and I'll do like bananas are great because they're like lower on the glycemic index. They're not going to like they don't have a ton of fiber. Like a lot of fruit you kind of want to stay away from because they have a lot of fiber. But that's one that you can carbo load with. So bananas and stuff like that. And then I do like the next day I do like salty pretzels or, anything salty. If I have pizza, I take the cheese off, which is no fun, but I do.
At all.
I know it's no fun. You can have a little bit of cheese, but like so many pizza places just pile on the cheese. But I kind of leave a little layer. Or this time I did like breadsticks. That worked really well. Breadsticks with marinara. Pasta with marinara is good. Rice is great. Sushi restaurants, as long as it's reputable, is a good place to go. Because you get the salt and then you have the lean protein from the fish. And then sushi rice is really good because actually sushi rice, they put sugar in to keep it sticky. So there's a little extra carbs there.
And I know you've told us sushi is great. I mean, it just scares me.
I know it scares a lot of people. That's honestly, sushi is my go-to before a marathon.
And I don't really love regular rice anyway. So rice isn't like something that my go-to. I mean,
I could do rice all day. So we actually did that. Then we went to, you want to be careful of things that can bother your stomach. Like if, like Petra can't do spicy. So she was really careful about the spicy stuff she'd had this weekend. And, spicy doesn't bother me so much when I'm running. So, I could do a little bit more of that.
No. And I actually can't do, marinara.
Oh,
like
really?
The acidity of, the tomatoes and that will send me right to a bathroom. So I'm always like, if I do pasta, it's just olive oil and garlic salt, just kind of.
Ooh, that's yummy.
It's actually really good. My husband says that's not food. Like it
is food for runners.
It's food for runners. Just olive oil and garlic salt. So you mentioned this earlier. So for people that might be doing a 5K or a 10K, do they do any sort of carb loading, or do you just say no?
I mean, it depends on the runner. Like if you're naturally eating a decent amount of carbs every day, you're fine. If you're somebody that restricts your carbs, you probably, even on a 5K or 10K, want to have a bigger dinner the night before. never, ever do you want to like gorge yourself for a 5K or 10K. And really like you can overdo it just and feel nasty. So you do have to be careful of that. I do suggest like the first couple times you carb load to track it just so that you know. If after that you can kind of eyeball it after you've done it one time. But yeah, for a 5K or 10K, I'll have like just one extra serving of carbs in my dinner and then like a bigger serving of carbs with my breakfast. And that's usually good.
And so, before a race like that, either the shorter distances or sort of the mid distances, like we do, like a half marathon rather than a full marathon, what should we be eating the carb wise on the day of? Because that's not a carb loading day, but you still need to get carbs that day.
You still have to have 200 calories an hour when you're racing.
Okay.
Even with a 10K. So I usually, like a 10K around an hour, that's 200 calories. So you don't necessarily need 200 for a 10K. But if you want to go faster, the more fuel you have, the faster you're going to go. So I keep telling people like train your stomach to have more rather than less. So that, and it depends on the person. Like the more muscle you have, the more you need. So the higher weight you are, the more you need. Like, so just kind of test it out with your racing and see what works for you. Like in a half marathon, I used to only do 100 calories an hour because I did like every 5 miles. And then I realized that, if I did 3, 6, and 9, I was racing really a lot better. And my last like 3 miles weren't as painful. So that worked better for me in the long run. So
in all of these things, you should at least practice a little bit. I mean, you don't have to gorge yourself every time you go out for one of your runs, but if you get used to it, you can train yourself for it.
And if you have a marathon this weekend and you're listening to this podcast, do not carbo load like we're telling you to if you haven't done it before. Unless you want to use foods that you've already eaten and just try to eat some extra carbs, foods that your body is already used to. Don't go try to do what we're telling you to do without practicing. You need to train your body.
I still laugh so much whenever a race, especially a race that's been around a long time, that they'll have the spaghetti dinner beforehand. And I was like, well, maybe not everybody wants to eat the spaghetti before, but like, I eat pretzels almost every day. Yeah. So going from a couple a day to bags a day, that was easier for me because my body was already used to how pretzels tasted, and then they have the salt for the even more holding in hydration as much as possible. So that's my go-to. It's either soft pretzels or hard pretzels.
Yeah, and the carbs actually help the fluid stay in your muscles. So like the fluid you're drinking, that's going to help. The salt, you need to make sure you're getting enough salt. The electrolytes, don't just go drink 100 ounces of water and don't put any salt in it. That's really not intelligent. Don't do that. There's so many people that are like, water's so good for you. Water's good for you, but you need to have electrolytes. Yes. Like salt is really important. Again, unless you have a medical condition that requires you to eat less salt, then don't do that.
Yeah. But the lady during one of the very big heat waves got what's it called? Water toxicity and died.
Hypernatremia.
Yeah. So
you can get it.
So she, she had 4 big water bottles thinking that like, oh gosh, I'm so hot. But then your body doesn't have enough. You dilute the things that your body needs. And then she actually died. So there is there is a reason to put these electrolytes, this salt into the water, even on days when you're not running a marathon the next day.
Yeah. And it's really important to, like don't wear a new pair of shoes on the shoes. Don't wear your new, it's the same with food. Like I literally had some clients probably about.
Oh, it's one of my favorite stories.
Oh my gosh. It was literally like a coach's nightmare. But anyway, they had this marathon and they read online that beets help with VO2 max, which is actually true.
So beets, like the vegetable, can help you use oxygen better, basically. Yes. So they're like, oh, fantastic. I read this online.
Yeah,
which actually is true.
It is actually true. But they'd never tried beets. And they thought, well, if I have a little bit, then a lot would be really good. And so they drank gallons of beet juice.
Oh, which first of all just makes me sick.
And then the next day, they basically spent the entire race pooping on the course. Like it was one of the, and I was like, and
you know
of course,
what beet juice looks like.
and of course they didn't even tell me. So they all have a bad race. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys got a bug or something. And then through the grapevine, I hear, well, coach, like maybe we had some beet juice. I'm like, okay, how much beet juice? Well, we carried around a gallon of beet juice. I'm like, oh.
So don't do that. Don't do that.
You work 12 to 16 weeks on training for a marathon. Don't blow it by doing something the day before you've never tried before. Don't do it.
That's cardinal rule number 1.
Yeah, cardinal
no
with
new
anything.
Shoes, no new clothes. No.
I don't care if it's a 5K. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Yes. So break in the shoes a couple of times. Learn what your body can and cannot accept as far as its food. It's all about training. And so, again, for some of these longer distances, as she mentioned, sometimes it's 4 months that you have given, and now you're going to turn around and do something stupid on the last day.
Yeah. And funny thing is, a lot of people self-sabotage that way. They're like, oh, I'm going to try it. They're not doing it intentionally.
Right.
But I'm like, were we really stressed out about this race? And now we had to you never know, but just try to avoid it because it can be such an anxiety-ridden time. Like before a race, you have all this build up and you're like so excited and you want to like let it all out and you have all this extra energy from the taper. And I'm like, please no taper tantrums. Please just stay focused. Do some crossword puzzles, pick up knitting, do something that's going to stop you from being on the internet and finding new ways to do things.
And think about carb loading. So look how happy, I do love pancakes. And so while that smile was there for real, I wasn't putting it on. By the halfway through those pancakes, I was just about done.
It really is brutal if you carb load correctly. It's very brutal. But then,
because you're saying if you enjoy it, you're probably not taking in enough. But adding some is better than nothing. But if you really want to get 500, for me, 500 grams of carbs in over 3 days,
And again, you're talking about limiting your fat, which just makes it no fun because carbs and fat go really great together. That makes it yummy. Like donuts are not going to cut it.
Nope.
Like I would stay away from donuts. I would stay away from like French fries. Like you think, okay, that's a carbohydrate. It's potato. It's not. It's mostly fat. So. And it's greasy. You want to stay away from grease. You want to stay away from things that are going to mess up your stomach, fiber. And then everything else is like kind of boring.
Bland and boring.
Like nobody wants to like sit there and eat sleeves full of Fig Newtons. Like that's basically what we do.
And then when you go to a restaurant, I ordered, the big pretzel.
Yeah.
After eating bags of pretzels, I was like, I guess I'm going to order
a soft one this
time.
Soft
pretzel for dinner. Sounds good. Which I usually love. I mean, soft pretzels are like, that's my thing. But after bags of hard pretzels, I was like.
And I would also say, like, when you're carb loading the day before your race, oftentimes it's better to do your last big meal like around 4, so your body has time to like digest it and kind of, and then have your breakfast in the morning 2 hours before your race, so it has a little time to settle. And then you can start your gels like 5 minutes before your race. So you're just kind of topping off those stores all the way through, but don't like have a big, huge carb meal at 9 o'clock at night because you can't sleep. Because that's gonna hurt your sleep even more.
So that is what carb loading is, how to do it.
Super fun.
It is fun. It's more fun if you're doing it in a group because then misery loves company, but it's kind of like fun misery because it's like, can you believe we don't want to eat this candy? That's all we've wanted to do is eat candy, and now it's hard. So, but I do think that people don't know exactly what carb loading is. They think it's adding in a pasta dinner the night before, when really it is science, and you have to do some real work to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll see you next Tuesday when we talk more about Run for Fun. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
let's go, let's go.